Hi, welcome to Ed Mosaic's third blogcast. And a blogcast is in place of a blog, one question, not as long as a podcast. So today I have Mariela Vasquez, and it's day 2 of Hispanic Heritage Month. So nice representation here. And I want to ask Mariela, as a bilingual teacher, she's also expecting. So I want to ask Mariela about her thoughts about raising a bilingual child as a bilingual teacher.
Well,
Oh,
I
and tell us
defer
how long you've been teaching bilingual.
oh, absolutely. So I've been teaching bilingual. I want to say this is my 6th year. And this will be, I want to say, my 16th year teaching overall. And I currently work with 5th and 6th grade bilingual students, teaching math and science. And I want to say all of my kids, the demographics are Central America, Dominican Republic, just, all over. So, am I going to be raising my child bilingual? Absolutely. That's something that me and my husband have discussed before, even before conceiving. How that's important to us because, unfortunately for him, although he is of Puerto Rican descent, his family did not raise him to be bilingual. So his parents were born here in New Jersey, and they spoke English for the most part. So his acquisition for Spanish language is kind of low at the moment, which is totally okay. Parents can make the decisions that they want, but he definitely wants, along with me, for our daughter to be bilingual. And I know that that's something that I've always wanted. And of course, I have to use my knowledge to let him know, like, okay, well, then you have to be the fully English parent, and I have to say all the Spanish words. We can't intermingle them because then she's going to get confused. And even with my parents who are fluent in both language, English and Spanish, I've already told them, when you're with her, talk to her in Spanish all the time. You don't have to switch up any languages for her. Just talk to her in Spanish, so she knows. So she just knows the language at some point from a young age. My first language was Spanish, and I was born here. I actually learned English at school. I was put in
Yeah,
ESL
the
classes.
English is going to come. The exposure will be there. It's just going to happen if you're living in the United States.
It's definitely going to happen, and I think that with my upbringing, I attributed that to my household was solely Spanish. My mother, my aunts, my grandmothers, my immediate family that took care of me, and my dad. They said, "We're in the house. We're going to talk Spanish." We read Spanish books. We watched Spanish shows, and then when I went to school, all English all the time. So there was a clear distinction in what I was learning and how my brain was developing and the flexibility that I had with both languages. And of course, like with any child growing up, you lose that language a little bit and you don't use it as much because then you become more social and you want to fit in. But I definitely want my daughter to have a healthy knowledge of both, and to be able to code switch whenever she feels comfortable.
And
Um,
let the audience know what code switching means.
well, code switching is when you change the language that you're speaking, and depending on the environment that you're in, or the people that you're amongst. So normally when I'm around my mom and my dad, who primarily speak Spanish but do speak English, they prefer Spanish. I talk to them in Spanish. I text them in Spanish. I get my practice it anyway. And then, of course, when I'm with my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, they speak primarily English. So I switch to English and I speak to them in English. So it's kind of like something that you learn to do instinctively, depending on the situations that you put yourself in. If you know that you're predominantly around Spanish-speaking people, well, you want to make them feel like they can communicate with you, which is super important. Um, and so, yeah, I think that I want her to be fluent in both, and I want her to know and feel comfortable when she can do that, amongst her peers, amongst her family. Because I know my husband, he wishes he grew up speaking more Spanish when he was
Mhm.
younger, and even now people hear his name and they're like, "Oh, tú hablas español? Do you speak Spanish?" And he's just like,
I
not
understand
really.
everything.
I can respond in English." So, and it kind of breaks my heart, but it's it's a choice that his parents made, which is totally fine. Um, but he wishes he knew more, and he wants his daughter to definitely feel comfortable with the language,
Mhm.
especially around our family, because we do have a lot of family members that just speak Spanish. My grandmother was my caretaker for at least 5 years, and she only knew Spanish. So that's the only way we could communicate. And even with my sister, who learns more English at a younger age, she always talked to my grandmother in English, and my grandmother would be like, "What? You gotta learn
Um,
some Spanish. You gotta learn some Spanish here." And so she would kind of like figure it out and say things. She understood it, like most kids that grow up in the States, they understand it. And I mean, most kids that grow up in Latino households, um, she understood it when she was younger, but she didn't feel comfortable using it. And even now, she's in her 30s and she's gotten much better at it, primarily because of her job. She's in human resources and she's had to use Spanish a lot, and
mhm.
she's had to find her workplace language when she needs it. So I think it's super important that if you have access to learning a second language, it'll definitely help you in the future. And I definitely want my daughter to have um, every opportunity to succeed. um, and if I can start with just a simple, teaching her Spanish, then that's what I'm going to do.
And there you have it. So thank you, Miss Mariela Criado, for joining us. I think at the beginning I used your maiden name.
It's okay.
This is my BFF, everybody, for over, I don't know, 30 years now, probably.
More than half our lives. Yes,
Yes. So
more than
I
half our lives.
appreciate you. I appreciate you answering this question for our third broadcast. It will air on day 4 of Hispanic Heritage Month. So we will be looking out for that. So thank you again, and hopefully you can come back for another quick broadcast in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and blessings to my niece who is almost here.
Oh, she's waiting to say she loves you.
Yay! And I'll end with this. Bendiciones. Ciao.
Gracias. Ciao.